Here's today's First Word Daily Devotion.
November the 19th takes us to Ezekiel 19 through 20. And you take up a lamentation for the princes of Israel and say. So here is a lamentation, and after such ferocious rhetoric of prophecy, it only makes sense for there to be a lament. Verse 12, the vine was plucked up in fury, cast down to the ground. The east wind dried up its fruit. They were stripped off and withered. As for its strong stem, fire consumed it. Now it is planted in the wilderness, in a dry and thirsty land, and fire has gone out from the stem of its shoots, has consumed its fruit, so that there remains in it no strong stem, no scepter for ruling. And so in other words, we have no king. And that then raises a question in our minds, and it should. What about the promise of a king? Well, look at verse 20. And at verse 20 here, we are recalling the promises. This is chapter 20. Chapter 20 takes us to recall the promises of God. And this serves as a balm for the lament of chapter 19. It's like ointment in a wound, the promises of God. Look at this verse here. This is verse 5. Thus saith the Lord God, on the day when I chose Israel. Now pay attention to that word choice. God chose Israel not because of anything in them other than his desire. In other words, it's not because of what they could do or should do or might one day do. No, it's because just simply God wanted to. Thus saith the Lord God, on the day when I chose Israel, I swore to the offspring of the house of Jacob, making myself known to them in the land of Egypt. I swore to them, saying, I am the Lord your God. On that day I swore to them that I would bring them out of the land of Egypt into a land that I had searched out for them, a land flowing with milk and honey, the most glorious of all lands. And I said to them, cast away the detestable things your eyes feast on, every one of you, and do not defile yourself with the idols of Egypt. I am the Lord your God. But they rebelled against me, and were not willing to listen to me. None of them cast away the detestable things their eyes feasted on, nor did they forsake the idols of Egypt. And so here again we have the story. God is going to recall the story, and I can go ahead and tell you how it's going to end, and you probably already know it's going to end in steadfast love. Then I said I would pour out my wrath against them, spend my anger against them in the midst of the land of Egypt. Verse 9, but I acted for the sake of my name. So here is faithless Israel meeting a faithful God. And this story is repeated. Look at verse 13. Then I said I would pour out my wrath upon them in the wilderness to make a full end of them. But I acted for the sake of my name. Verse 17. Nevertheless, my eye spared them, and I did not destroy them or make a full end of them in the wilderness. Now here's verse 20. This is verse 21. Then I said I would pour out my wrath upon them, spend my anger against them in the wilderness, but I withheld my hand and acted for the sake of my name. And look at chapter 20 and verse 25. This is a very fun verse here. This verse here says that the law was never intended to lead to life. This is a very provocative verse. Moreover, God says, I gave them statutes that were not good, and rules by which they could not have life. I defiled them through their very gifts and their offering up all their firstborn, that I might devastate them. I did it that they might know that I am the Lord. So in other words, the people had misplaced their heart's affections. They misplaced their desire. And God would not, instead of accepting sacrifice, as vile of a sacrifice as they tried to offer, God decided instead to judge them. As I live, he says at verse 31, as I live, declares the Lord God, I will not be inquired of by you. In other words, everything that God is maintaining his position. He is in full control. What is in your mind shall never happen. Look how constraining God's love is at verse 32. What's in your mind was never going to happen. The thought, let us be like the nations, let the tribes of the countries, and worships wood and stone. As I live, declares the Lord, surely with a mighty hand and an outstretched arm and with wrath poured out, I will be king over you. I will bring you out from the peoples, gather you out of the countries where you are scattered with a mighty hand and an outstretched arm, with wrath poured out. I will bring you into the wilderness of the peoples, and there I will enter into judgment with you, face to face. And here's how it ends at verse 38. Then you will know that I am the Lord. In verse 41, I will manifest my holiness among you in the sight of all the nations, and you will know that I am the Lord, when I bring you into the land of Israel, the country that I swore to your fathers. There you shall remember your ways and your deeds which you've defiled yourself, and you shall loathe yourself for all the evils that you've committed. You shall know that I am the Lord, when I deal with you for my name's sake, not according to your evil ways, nor according to your corrupt deeds, O house of Israel, declares the Lord. So look how constraining this love is. God says, you may think that you're in control. You think that you can get rid of me. There's absolutely no way. What the thought that you have in your mind is that we're just going to be like everybody else. God says, no way. I love you too much to let you go. 1 Peter chapter 2 then, verse 4, as you come to him, a living stone, rejected by men, but in the sight of God, chosen and precious. There again, that word chosen. You yourselves, like living stones, are being built up as a spiritual house to be a holy priesthood, to offer spiritual sacrifices acceptable to God through Jesus Christ. And of course, here we have this beautiful verse mentioning that Jesus Christ is the stone that was set up by God, chosen and precious, but rejected by men. And this stone that the builders rejected has become the cornerstone, the stone of stumbling, and a rock of offense. Now look at verse 9. But you are a chosen race, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a people for his own possession, that you may proclaim the excellencies of him who called you out of darkness into his marvelous light. And then look at this language at verse 10. Once you were not a people, but now you are God's people. Once you had not received mercy, but now you have received mercy. And that language of a chosen race takes on new meaning when we read it in the light of Ezekiel 19 through 20. Thank God for his love that chooses us. Now let's look at Psalm 119. Let's go over our Hebrew again. Aleph, Beit, Gimel, Dalet, Hey, Vav, Zion, Chet, Tate, Yod, Kaf. And today we have Lamed. Forever, O Lord, your word is firmly fixed in the heavens. Look at this language. Your faithfulness endures to all generations. You have established the earth, and it stands fast. Thank God for his faithfulness that endures through all generations. And that faithfulness of God has reached us, and thankfully it will reach beyond us. And in that we have hope.